Welcome to Shattered Realities with your hosts Kate Valentine and Fahrusha. Prepare to have your paradigms shifted and your truths questioned. And now, Shattered Reality.
Well, hi, Fahrusha.
Hello there, Kate Valentine. It's good to be speaking to you again.
It is.
And we have a wonderful show today, but let's slate.
Okay.
Today is Tuesday, December 6th, 2016.
Okay.
And we're back with Shattered Reality. Today's show, we have a very interesting guest, a gentleman who has been in the field of spirituality, edge science, health, and all sorts of interesting things. His name is Alan Steinfeld. He is from New York City, and he is involved with New Realities. That's the name. He shares one word with us, the reality word. And in fact, many of the things that he is involved with are similar, but he has a bigger umbrella, I'd say. He has done programs in New York City that I have participated in, as well as he's had me on an audio podcast of his, and he has videos on YouTube. So let's welcome Mr. Alan Steinfeld. Welcome, Alan.
So glad you're here.
Thank you both. This is really an honor because I know I'm talking to like-minded people and a good head start.
I was very, very well. Alan has figured in my life in a couple of ways. We know each other for a while, and we see each other sometimes at a vegetarian restaurant here or there, or bump into one another. But and we're always really friendly. But that's not the basis about this. He has done two things in my life which are very important. Firstly, the first thing he did was he was the point of contact initially between myself and Russell Targ. He had a program for about one of Russell Targ's books, and we spoke about remote viewing, and I did a remote viewing session with Russell Targ because of Alan Steinfeld. That was the first thing, and that was wonderful. So he was the person who connected me to my friend Russell Targ, and then I actually went on a trip to Italy, to Damanhur, with Alan Steinfeld. Alan, so what's up with you today?
Well, I have to say, I forgot about the Russell Targ connection. I didn't forget about our trip to Italy with a whole bunch of other really interesting people.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of that trip?
Oh, I mean, those kind of the purpose of the trip?
Yeah. What was
is that the question?
Yeah.
That's a question from Kate. That's a question from Kate.
Was there a topic? Yeah. I'm assuming there was a topic and people were meeting to discuss it.
Well, I'll give you an overview that includes that. My job, my vision, my company, in a sense, New Realities, is about connecting the dots of a greater spiritual reality that we're actually living in that most people don't know about. So whether that's remote viewing or spiritual communities or my television program, where I interview channels and lots of UFO research, it's all about the same thing. That reality as we know it, as we've been conditioned to think about it, isn't what is real, isn't what is true. There's another level, which I'm sure you're both aware of a spiritual essence, which is the overriding factor really in people's lives, or should be. And this is the time that we're coming into. This is the reality's unfoldment that we are moving into collectively, although by the last election. But it is. I think things like the national election show us the dark areas we have to move through collectively in order to come to this greater civilization that we all know exists. So that sort of connects the dots.
We are like, our focus is a little bit different here insofar as we don't talk too much about spirituality, though we're not against spirituality in any way, shape, or form, but we are more about looking at it from the other side, which is consciousness, and how consciousness is ubiquitous in the universe. And that sort of connects it so we can talk to people who are like edge science people, which is kind of what we're about. But I think what Kate was asking you, Alan, is I know why we went to Damanhur, but maybe you would like to tell our audience about why we went to Damanhur.
And where is it? I mean, obviously in Italy, but where in Italy?
It's northern Italy, north of Torino.
Okay.
But for me, I just want to say there's not really a big difference between consciousness and spirituality. I don't see that as distinct. In my understanding of the term, I see consciousness, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, all part of a bigger framework about perception. So this is really where I jump in.
I agree with you. I agree with you, but if you want to speak to a scientist, most scientists, if you turn around and say spirituality, they don't want to talk to you. But if you turn around and say consciousness,
they don't
if you say consciousness and talk about it from the point of view of consciousness and how, like Max Planck said, you can't get behind consciousness because everything that science does is sort of like is done from a point of view of consciousness. You have to have consciousness to experiment in science, and so. That's the reason. I agree that there's a lot the same about it. Okay.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I think, even from a scientific point of view, I think the word consciousness is actually a little vague. I mean, what I think I would say, and that includes this idea of reality, is perception.
Good.
Perception is a word we can all sort of understand.
Absolutely.
And this is really, if we want to kind of what I meant. I'm trying to expand people's perception, which also includes their consciousness, of what is possible and what is. The whole idea behind shattered reality is that the reality you thought was existing is not the reality that truly is. So
absolutely. We're shattering paradigms here, and so are you.
Exactly. So my whole awakening to that happened because my reality was shattered by some type of contact, UFO, ET type contact. I mean, I, had no reference point for what was happening to me. I don't know if we want to jump into that, but we could,
I do want to get into that, Alan, but I want you to answer, just for the sake of our listeners, talk to the question about going to Damanhur and why it is we went to Damanhur and now how it is, the kind of community that it is and what it is. Anything you don't want to fill in, I can fill in too.
You fill in what your piece, because I think the reason I went was because I was really excited about a group of people, was back then 500, maybe 1,000, living in community with the focus was on consciousness. The focus was on a collective awareness, and they were living differently.
Damanhur.
Yes, they were living in a different way than normal society, and that was really attractive to me. What were you going to say?
I was going to say Damanhur is physically a place, as you know, which is in the Val di Chiesella in northern Italy, just above Torino, and it's at the foothills of the Italian Alps. It was started by a man named Alberto Aiodi. I hope I'm saying Alberto Aiodi, who is also known as Falco. He and a group of individuals about 30 years ago went up to this area. They had purchased some land. They dug under the ground, and they dug out these magnificent caverns in the ground. They dug them out of the dolomite there, and they painted them, and they put in art. So it was secret for many years, and then for
20 years, I think they kept it secret.
Then about 10, 12 years ago, it became open to the public because the government wanted to shut it down, as I recall. But then the person who came up there to look at it was so overwhelmed by the beauty of the place that he reported back to the government that it should be a national treasure and not be shut down. Am I about correct on this, Alan?
Yeah, the other thing I would just add is that they actually they hollowed out the whole inside of a mountain and built a temple. They built many temples inside these mountain temples to different types of energies. So
yes.
there were lots of different rooms in this huge inside this mountain, and so each of these rooms, what was one of them? The Hall of Ancestors, the Hall of Mirrors, the Hall of Dreams. And each one had a very powerful essence. And I have to also say, Falco himself, and who knows, that he was from the future and he was directed to come back in time and build this as a kind of forward invitation to how we might live on planet Earth. So all the people coming around, if you don't want to use the word spiritual, were very conscious.
No, I'm happy to use the word spiritual. I've just said that this is not about, per se, spirituality, but it's more about edge science and stuff like that. But go forward. I'm happy to use the word spiritual. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, no, don't be sorry. No, I understand where you're coming from. So anyway, this community was about a spiritual awareness, a conscious awareness, and all that is the awareness that there's other dimensional realities that we interface with. So a big part of their work was dreaming, time travel. They said, in my interview with Falco, I was there, and of course, we were really lucky to see him,
Absolutely, before he passed on. Absolutely.
So the one thing I remembered about that interview, I asked him about time travel because they claim to have time travel chambers there at Damanhur. And he said that time is a matter of property. Like every place has a time kind of signature to it. So you have like a table in your room there. That table is round and it's tall and it's this, but it also exists in a time. That's a signature of that thing. So if you could somehow transfer the temporal signature of an object, you could also make it travel in time. That's sort of what I remember. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's basically what they were saying. I kind of psychically got a connection for them to the Cathars in France, and when I got a chance to speak to Falco, when I was able to get up and ask my question, I asked him about that, and he indicated that yes, in fact, that was true, that he was somehow connected to the Cathars, but he didn't go on and tell us that. However, one thing that I want to be clear is that there are multi dimensions to the Damanhur experience. It was artistic, it was spiritual, it was ecological, and more, and political also, because they had their own money. They were separate from the country of Italy in certain ways. But I don't want to go off too long on Damanhur.
No, they also socially they were different too, because they lived in communities of 20 people, not in nuclear families. They were really creating, and this is what attracted me, is that they were really creating a new way of living with each other in community, within society, and doing things differently. That's what was so special about visiting them.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm so glad that I went, and I'm so glad that you instituted that trip. It was a fantastic experience, and I want to thank you for that, and also for kind of making it possible for me to first time meet Russell Targ, who has become, a friend. So
great.
Moving on from there, we are coming up to asking you about what it is right now that you want to tell us about your experience with aliens, with UFOs. You are an experiencer, and I wonder if you could tell us that whole situation. Tell us what happened.
I will. I mean, there's so many. When you're an experiencer, as you know, um, the time lapse and the interactions, and it's hard to get it all in a kind of chronological order. But my earliest experiences, and I think I've shared this with you before, and from something you wrote on one of your blogs,
Yes.
was waking up like when I was maybe 13 or 14 and not being able to move, and at the same time hearing a really loud sound and feeling like I was being pulled by the back of my neck. Now, I don't know if that was UFO related, but it was related to something
Out of
that
body.
out of body, but out of body with a presence was a kind of creepy, eerie sort of, probably the Greys, I would say, were part of this interface between this kind of experience that I had. And then I also had a trip cross country. That was one level. And then one in 1987, you remember that year, 87, the year of the harmonic convergence?
Yes.
When a lot of I would say awareness of consciousness. It was sort of the dawning of a new time. I mean, the 60s, of course, was a dawning of a age, but 80s, the mid 80s was a kind of coming together of what was called New Age, although by the time the 80s ended, no one wanted to be called New Age because New Age somehow got a bad name. I don't know why. I liked the term New Age. I mean, it was kind of, it referred to fluff spirituality, which it really wasn't. It was about people trying to understand what consciousness is. But anyway, in 1987, there was something called the harmonic convergence.
Yes.
A lot of people were coming together on a global level. I would say it was the first truly global conscious awakening, collective conscious awakening. So I was traveling that summer, checking out a lot of places that were focused on the harmonic convergence. I was in Sedona for the first time, Santa Fe. I went to Washington State and Oregon, and then I was driving back cross country from Oregon, the Oregon Country Fair I was at in 1987. I had this girlfriend. We were driving in my van, and we were driving all day long, like 12 hours, and we were going from Oregon to the East Coast. So we stopped at this little place, and I seem to remember it was North Platte, Nebraska, which is western Nebraska. And it was like by these canals, these little deserted canals. And we were just really tired. We just passed out. We just kind of went right to bed. We just fell right to sleep. And then we woke up in the morning, that following morning, in the same position we went to bed in, like as if we were frozen, as if we were just, I don't know, drugged or unmovable or something. But it was strange. You never wake up in the same position you go to sleep, and you don't even remember what position you go to sleep in, but you don't.
Right. Anyway,
There was something very strange, and there was something very, again, eerie or creepy about that. So anyway, we drove back, and then it was the summertime. It was time before the August harmonic convergence, and I'm at the pool, and my mother, who I think is part of a history of abductions, noticed this mark on the back of my leg, which was a 4-pronged puncture mark.
Uh-oh.
And she said, "What is that?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, who looks at the back of their knee?" And I said, I don't know what that is. It's probably a spider bite. And then I started to get involved at that point with Bud Hopkins and the Intruder Foundation. I actually was doing a video for a woman who was choreographing her abduction experience. So I told her about this, and she said, about this mark on the back of my leg. And she said, that is a mark of abduction. And that just freaked me out. I mean, I'm still a little freaked. I couldn't comprehend that. I couldn't not accept. I mean, I sort of accept it, but I couldn't integrate it because there was no memory consciously of that experience. So I called this girlfriend of mine up. I said, "Do you remember that time we slept at this thing? I think I I think we were taken aboard, and she was regressed. I couldn't be. Someone tried to regress me, but anyway, she was regressed. She saw the whole thing. We were taken aboard. We were floated aboard this ship, and my back of my leg was connected to her ankle, and they were kind of wiring us for something, some kind of extraterrestrial experiment. One phase, and then the following summer, I think it was, I remember having strange dreams about extraterrestrials. One where they took sperm from me, and I think it was like a few weeks later, they this is the weirdest part. These beings, whoever they were, I couldn't actually see them, woke me up in the middle of the night by tickling the inside of my thigh. And they did that 3 times. And then when I finally came to, they put this little, I guess it was a hybrid being in my hands. It looked like a little deer with big eyes. But it didn't look like an ET to me in my screen memory. Of course, if you've been talking to abductees, you know that screen memory is the way your mind creates events to make it more accessible to the body.
People see owls and raccoons typically, but I imagine a deer is in there.
Deers are common. Lots of animals are common because you don't want to see an ET. I mean, you could if you were integrated enough or conscious enough, but this is what I saw, and I thought that was weird enough. I said, "What?" To myself, "What is this?" I had no. Some people have emotional connections to these hybrid offspring. I didn't feel anything. I just said, this is really weird. And then I sort of went back to sleep. These events take place in, I would say for most abductees, I can't speak really, but the experiences I've had with contact, it takes place in an altered state of consciousness and in an altered awareness. It doesn't, like we're in one awareness, we're talking, and that's great. This is more of a beta state.
Right.
Interactions with ETs do not take place in this level of consciousness. Do you get that too?
I would say that is largely true. I would have to agree with you on that. My experiences have been, we're all experiences here at Shattered Reality on some level.
Good.
I would have to say that my early experiences were very much the same as yours, which you had mentioned, being taken out of your body. You thought by grays. I never saw grays, but I did have the feeling that not being alone, being forced out of my body, being taken elsewhere, it's just really an unusual circumstance that is shared by so many human beings across the planet. And if you know of our friend Stanton Friedman there, when he goes and you know who Stanton Friedman is, right, Alan?
Yes, I've interviewed him. I love Stanton.
So when he goes into a place and to give a lecture, he says, how many people have seen UFOs out there? And people about, it depends on the group, anywhere from 25 to 75% of the people there will raise their hands. And then he says to them, okay, how many of you reported that incident? And maybe 1 or 2 hands goes up because most people are afraid of the ridicule. They don't want to be labeled. They don't want to be stigmatized in their jobs or in their community, so they don't go out and report this stuff. So if you consider the people that report as only the tip of the iceberg, people like you and I and Kate, we're sort of at the vanguard here because we're willing to talk about this stuff. But I think that this is really going to grow and grow throughout the 21st century as long as humanity manages to survive. Well,
I just wanted to say one thing about that. It looked like we were on a really good track with Hillary Clinton about John Podesta was really on top of disclosure. And then I have to say, and people like Stephen Bassett are amazing, the whole movement just seemed to be derailed by the change in the election, which was very disappointing for a lot of us. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Pretty.
We'll have to see where this goes now. We try to stay away from politics on the show here.
No, I'm not saying it was wrong or right. I was just looking forward to a possible disclosure with John Podesta.
Yes, we all were. And John Podesta seemed to show an incredible interest in the subject of UFOs.
Well, he wrote the foreword for Leslie Kane's book.
Yes, he did.
Exactly.
But I guess he was silenced as well. But before all your experiences, then you were not a particularly spiritual person. Is that it? That this sort of awakened it in you?
That's a really good question. So let me see So I think the whole idea of these early contact, and I don't know if they were grays either, because I actually have never seen grays. I've just felt a presence. So grays, I don't know if maybe even ready, but I think because my reality was shattered or altered as a child with these sort of out-of-body type experiences, it made me aware that I was not my body. And when you know that you're more consciousness than just the body, it directs you to the kind of spiritual material, because those are the people writing about that.
Yes.
So it kind of went hand in hand. That's why I think people who separate, and I talk to spiritual communities, and they say, UFOs are not part, they don't feel like there's a connection spiritually. And I think they're totally wrong. For me, they're absolutely connected. The whole idea of these other beings, these other dimensions, and spirituality is nothing but another dimension. It's another level of consciousness. So they are absolutely connected. So I think, does that answer your question, Kate?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So in other words, it was always there, and it just sort of awakened it in you, or made you more aware of this.
By having these unusual,
right, just brought it out.
The ET possibilities, yes, and the spiritual. I mean, for me, I was looking for answers. So wherever I could find answers was that was in the UFO literature, or meeting people like Bud Hopkins or people like John Mack, who was really, I think, someone who pulled it all together on this spiritual.
He was great. I have one question.
The passport, yes, anything you want. Yes.
I have one question about that, about how you feel about one aspect of that. We had Bud Hopkins. He was, I think, he's passed on, as has John Mack, as have a number of other people. Now, Bud Hopkins was ill, and he was a man. How old was he? We both went through his
70ish, I think.
About 70ish, yes. But you and I saw each other at his memorial service at the Friends Seminary there that day.
Yes,
and that was a very sad occasion. But how many of these people, like Carla Turner and Bud Hopkins and John Mack, they have died perhaps prematurely? I'm not saying so much about poor Bud. He was physically ill
for quite some time.
But what do you think about the passing of John Mack and Carla Turner? Are you familiar with Carla Turner?
I know Carla Turner's books. Actually, I don't know what happened to her, but I was surprised that she did die. I think John Mack's was an accident. I don't think anyone, I think, it was sort of 5 or 7 years after the fact when he first came out with his book. So I think it was unfortunate, but I don't know what happened with Carla Turner, whose books I really love. But what happened to her?
Yes. Well, Carla Turner, I mean, I'm not intimately familiar with her, but I know that she had a tremendous amount of paranormal activity around her, and that she moved, I believe, she was in Florida or Texas, and she and her husband were both involved in teaching, and then they ended up moving to Arkansas, and then stuff started happening to them where they lived, and then she got very sick and she died very prematurely. I mean, I think she was a reasonably young woman, certainly young for death. She in her late 40s or something like that, and she passed on. But she was sort of exposing the underbelly of some of this ET contact, which wasn't particularly positive. So I guess there's a positive and negative side to the ET contact, and I don't I don't want to dwell on the negative side myself. I guess we should.
I don't think it was a conspiracy. I mean, so many people have exposed Betty Andreasen is still around. Whitley Strieber, I just had lunch with this summer. There's so many people that are exposing this that have been around a long time, and there's still David Jacobs is still around. Whether
yes.
I don't necessarily agree with him, so I don't like to be too much of a conspiracy person. I think Well,
that's a rational way to look at it. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about it. My jury's out.
No, I don't think. I think John Mack was correct. No, I don't tend towards conspiracy. I think, of course, there's a conspiracy to keep the UFO thing secret, and that's going to be exposed. But I don't know if they're really knocking. I doubt that. I mean, they should have. Anyway, there's too much value, and I think we're cracking the code. I think. If you listen to like Tom DeLonge and some of these other people started to get involved in disclosure, there seems to be a break within the top secret intelligence where some of the people are trying to bring this out to the open. And I think Obama was hinting at it. I think Bill Clinton was. I think Hillary Clinton was hinting at it.
Yes.
And I don't think. Not to get into politics, but I don't think Donald Trump really cares about this subject because he really just cares about his own self, I think. But I don't think he cares about it.
I don't think it's of interest to him, my understanding. It's not of interest.
He's got a lot of other interests that come
to him
first.
But I do think that the question I wanted to talk about was Tom DeLonge.
Yeah.
He's a very interesting fellow. He is, of course, was with a band. He may still be with that band. I'm not so sure if he's with the band still or not, or if he's doing other things now. But it has been brought up that he may be the victim of disinformation. And I don't know if he is or not. I mean, I'm not privy to that inside information, but we can think of people who have started out with all the best interests in mind, people like Linda Moulton Howe, who got involved and then was taken into a disinformation project by the American military. They brought her onto a base. They gave her a little bit of real information, a little bit of fake information, and they sent her out with it. I am
really, because I don't know about the disinformation. I think Linda is a great researcher.
I do too.
I don't know what disinformation she has, but as far as Tom DeLonge, I talked to two people who made this their lives. I mean, it's sort of our life too, but these people, Grant Cameron, who has the UFO presidential website.
Yes, we know Grant, sure.
And Stephen Bassett. I talked to both of those people about Tom DeLonge, and they, especially Grant, we went 2 hours. He looks like Grant was really brought in on the inside, and he is given some false information to make him look ridiculous, but enough true information to bring out some of the secrets. And I think
that's right. That's what disinformation is, this combination of real stuff versus misinformation, and the stuff that is patently misinformation is put in there to make the researchers look like, forgive the expression, horses' asses.
Well, I agree. There's lots of information, disinformation. I think Linda, I like Linda. I
do too,
high integrity. So I'm not sure what disinformation she was involved with.
Well, she was given, she was not the perpetrator of the disinformation, but she was, and she will probably tell you this herself, I'm guessing, that they brought her in, they gave her a whole bunch of information, a good portion of which was incorrect, and it sort of, the effect was to make her look foolish at the time because she didn't know which was real and which wasn't real. You just don't when you're in that position. And I can't think of the two guys that were in on it.
But weren't they involved too in that incident up in I can't think of it now. With the yellow foam and all that, and the boat, and it was in Canada.
Are you talking about Maury Island?
Yeah.
I think that Maury Island is before Linda Moulton Howe's time.
Much, yes. But I think that the men...
Well, I never heard of Maury Island. What's Maury Island?
You hadn't heard about the Maury Island incident. I'm not sure I can do it justice.
Okay.
No,
but
I'll research it.
I will just tell you.
M-A-U-R-Y.
M-A-U-R-Y, the Maury Island. It involved the report of a UFO that dropped slag from it. It looked like one of the UFOs was up in the sky and kind of was not navigating properly, and it dropped slag onto a boat, which killed the fellow's dog, purportedly.
What do you mean slag?
Slag is
like
molten metal.
Or they described it, too, as a yellow foamy substance.
Okay.
Oh, and it kills. Well, there must be evidence of that then, of that foam. They must have it.
It turned into a whole dog and pony show where the military went there, including some Air Force people who then later went up in a plane and died because they were carrying this slag. There may have been yellow foam, but there was also metal slag that they were bringing this physical evidence. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. They were bringing this physical evidence back to the Air Force Base, and they were two fairly high military officers, and they were killed in this plane that went down with the slag.
What year was this? What year?
Oh boy, 1952, 4 in that somewhere between.
Yeah, it was shortly after
it sounds
47.
Vaguely familiar, but so they never recovered the slag.
No, they never recovered the slag, and the fellow that was implicated in this situation was also seen on the grassy knoll when Kennedy was shot. So if you look it up, you'll Chrisman, Fred Lee Chrisman is the perpetrator. I pulled that right out of my nose. I'm telling you.
Really?
Fred Lee Chrisman was the person who was part of the Maury Island incident, and he is the one who people say that they saw on the grassy knoll. He might be a disinformation operative from the government, but we don't know. This is all shrouded in.
Certainly was Linda Mountain. I mean, that would make the man like very old, but I think he still had something to do with it.
With Linda Moulton Howe?
Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't know. Well,
he may be a time traveler.
Agree to disagree. I don't know.
Yeah,
for sure about it.
He may be like if you're involved with the Kennedy thing on the grassy knoll. That could be a whole timeline. No, I mean, there's a lot of paranormal stuff that I don't think can be explained from the old way of looking at things. So that's really what's so exciting about what I'm doing is trying to understand reality in a different way, which is not linear, right? It's not what we've been told it is. You know,
it would seem that's the truth, that time passes at different speeds, and we are stuck in time as biological entities. But if we were not biological entities, just our consciousness does not have to be rooted in time. I would say
exactly. That's what that movie Arrival.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yes, it's a good movie. I saw it. You should see it. Right?
I'd like to.
It's all about time. It's really not about ETs. It's about the transmutation of time and consciousness and awareness and a loop of time.
It's a very good movie. It's a very good movie, and I recommend it highly. So right now you're about to do a show, not a show, but a lecture, a presentation at the New York MUFON chapter up in Tarrytown. And you're going to be speaking about a particular crop circle. Is that the case? Or would you like to fill us in?
Yeah. Well, I'll fill you in on that, but let me tell you what also I'm doing. I'm actually writing about a book about this whole idea about ETs and perception and how our reality is distorted. So, I'm trying to... Yes.
I was going to say, so, obviously we have sort of the everyday idea of what reality is. So what exactly is your description of the...
I'll tell. Well, it's like when you're in the presence of these beings, or even if you see a UFO, there's a time distortion, like we just said. There's a sense of reality, of you actually kind of being separated from your body, or your consciousness being bigger, because when you're in contact with these beings, they're in such a field of awareness, it brings you to their field. So, for instance, did you ever meet like some high spiritual teacher, some guru? And when you're in that presence, there's a level of clarity and awareness that you don't have around ordinary people. Well, the same thing in a way is true when you're around ETs. Your perception, or my perception, has been distorted. It's been as if the gravity of their consciousness overshadows our basic human awareness. So time bends, colors look different. The fabric of space-time itself is distorted. It's as if you're on drugs. It's as if you're in an altered state because of the emanations of their conscious field. We're talking about field dynamics here, distorts, and it's not really, but it distorts our human morphogenetic field. So because we're not in as great a field, it has to bend towards the ET consciousness. And that can either, if you're really not a conscious being, that just knocks you out. There's no way to stay in awareness when you're in the ET space. But if you are aware, if you have worked on lucid dreaming or more of a conscious expansion, then you could stay more lucid and more conscious in the ET space and have an awareness of those realities.
I agree.
Dreamlike, but this is just
I agree,
my
though.
awareness. So
I definitely agree, Alan.
And I think this is such an important thing as disclosure comes closer to realize that it's not like actually Linda Moulton House said when she was talking to John Mack, it's not going to happen over a cup of coffee. When we're in that field, she said this at the citizens' hearings for UFO disclosure in Washington, when we are meeting the other, these beings, our whole sense of reality shifts. And this is why disclosure is such a difficult topic. And this is what I'll be talking about at the UFO Roundtable up in Yonkers this week. The distortion of reality that we're going to have to understand and start to acclimate to as the ET presence gets closer. The notion of consciousness itself comes into question. And this is the dress rehearsal for contact. We have to start to be aware that we are multidimensional, that we exist on all levels at once, that reality is not linear, that these ETs can bend time and space and actually our awareness itself. So if we're going to make contact in a conscious way, we have to realize that consciousness is malleable. It's plastic. It's fluid. It bends. And we have to become aware beings that can bend with consciousness itself. Does that make sense?
I agree with you largely. And I would have to say that, as Robert Monroe famously said, we are more than our physical bodies. And that is something that people have to understand. But let's take that a little bit further and ask what your opinion is. And I know that Whitley Strieber has come in on this as well, that when the idea of disclosure, talking about disclosure, is it possible that the government, at least the Black Ops people that may know more about the ET presence than we're given information on, is it possible that they are moving away from disclosing because of the idea that maybe an average person who isn't up to speed on these things. Just the guy down the street mowing his lawn, or the woman cooking dinner is not ready to become aware of ETs, because they could burn out your circuits in your mind if you're not ready for it.
And they probably don't even care.
Well, I think some of them care. I think they care because they're going. They're going. But
I honestly don't.
I
really think, you may get disclosure, and there may be all these wonderful creatures, and I think these average people go, yeah, that's great. And they'll go on mowing their lawn and cooking their dinner, and 10%, it's the old bell curve thing. 10% will be really interested, 10% will use it for evil purposes, and the other 80% will go on mowing their lawns and cooking dinner.
But if they have that...
I agree with that.
Yes.
I thought you said the ETs didn't care. But I mean,
I think the ETs care. They wouldn't be here.
Well, I think the ETs are giving us a very slow burning disclosure. This is what Robert Hastings said in his, that they will come and go. And
this has taken place over the centuries. I mean, what you're describing is religious experiences from the days of the cavemen.
Yes.
So, you're exactly describing a religious experience.
Yes, it's religious experiences. And I think there's a distinction.
The physics of it.
Religious experiences and ET experiences, although some people would claim maybe in the past that an ET experience was a religious experience, like Whitley sort of. There is that bridge between the two. But I do think UFO contact, UFO sightings are up. I think there's an increase in the level of awakenings and general spiritual awakenings. People overnight, I've met about half a dozen people in the last few years. Suddenly they have this out of nowhere, boom, they have this awakening. And lots of times they connect it to the ETs or the Syrians or whatever kind of group you seem to identify with. But the other part of the question is, yes, I think like Copernicus, who said that the Earth was not the center of the universe, only a small percentage really cared and was affected. Most people went on with their lives and said, so what? I think that will be the same with the majority of people who don't see the reality that we're actually connected to something bigger. And this is where the issue of spirituality or consciousness and the ETs do merge.
Yes.
Us when we are aware that we're part of something bigger than our own little petty dramas. It wakes us up to the greater capacity of who we are as human beings, and there's a greater cosmos to interface with, and more of our neurophysiology gets ignited in the exchange of a greater possibility.
Okay, I'm on board with all of that. I want to take it a step back just for our listeners to sort of change definitions in a certain way, because Kate said religious experience
or spiritual experience.
But
I use it interchangeably. I don't mean a organized religion.
I get that. But I would just go. I would call it, if no one minds, just for the sake of definition, a transcendent experience. Okay,
but some people have called those religious.
Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there for a second, because to me, to use the word religious indicates a dogma or a set of a belief. It's a belief system. A religion is a belief system. And often people who have transcendent experiences come back from the transcendent experience and institute a system of beliefs that might not be really contained in the actual transcendent experience. It is what they have done with it. So although I don't have anything against someone having a religion, you're all welcome to whatever religion you choose, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. But I would say that using the word religion in this context is probably just confusing things. It's not wrong.
Right.
No, let me just clarify, I think, what you're saying. I would say that if you're already involved in sort of a dogmatic religion. If you have one of these contacts and you see a light flashing or something, you call it religious. But all religious experiences are actually transcendence experiences. It just depends what frame you put around it. And of course, not all, but I think a lot of what people call, I would say all these experiences. You see Jesus, maybe that's really an ET in disguise. That's a transcendent experience that your limited psychology, not yours, but people's limited psychology calls religion. There are no religious experiences. They're all transcendent.
Right. That's where, because religion it centers around a particular dogma. I just want to be clear so people listening to us don't misunderstand what we're saying. And I'm with both of you on this subject.
Although I would say, according to Whitley's last book, which I really recommend reading,
The Supernatural, that he did with Jeffrey Kirpal.
Yes. Even calling it an ET experience is a level of dogma.
Yes.
This is what they're making point of. And I agree. We're calling it ETs. We're calling these things, this experience we've had, ETs, but that's based on a very limited belief system. We actually don't know what these things are. We have no idea. We have no so we call them ETs because that fits into a box
of extraterrestrial. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're from a particular star system.
It doesn't mean we understand. This is the truth. As I see it, anything about what they are, who they are, what they're here for. We know nothing about. It's as much as, this is how I see it, your dog or your cat looking at you at the computer. They have no idea. They don't have the capacity. This is my theory about us and these ETs who are living at a greater capacity. It doesn't mean they're better than us or even greater than us, because I think on a soul level they're equal to us. But the capacity to maneuver through reality, just like our capacity as we compare to our animals, is much greater. That's how much far in advance these beings, whoever they are to us. That's my theory anyway.
Well, yeah, that sounds rational, and it sounds as though it's probably largely true. How do you come down on the part, though? I know Whitley Strieber has mentioned a number of times that the UFO or ET reality, if we find out about these beings, that it sort of changes the paradigm entirely, and that on some level it might be dangerous for us as humans.
No, I don't know if Whitley ever said it was dangerous. I think I never heard him say that. But I think if we do find out about it, it does change the paradigm. But it may take us into a little bit of a downside, a little bit of a shock, of a shattered reality, if you want to call it that. But the upside of that is to gain greater awareness and creativity. It's sort of like when Columbus discovered the New World. It brought more invention. It created, Columbus's whole thing instigated the movement of the printing press and religious freedoms and the Protestant Reformation, and this whole idea of this new world increased the creative movement of Renaissance. This is my theory. So there's the upside to finding out about, or the public acknowledgement of the ET situation will expand us in ways we cannot fathom at this point because we're not expanded. You know,
be interesting.
It should be very, very, very interesting.
It's exciting.
New reality. Okay, it'll be a new reality.
That it will be. That it will be.
It certainly will.
Because it will, on some level, even affect the guy mowing the lawn, the woman cooking dinner, because suddenly dinner will be a little bit different. Maybe it will be vegetarian, and maybe meat will seem funny. And then the guy mowing the lawn will think, well, maybe I shouldn't be destroying all these chloroplasts, And then,
or maybe... One more thing, I think it's really, and I think this is the biggest threat that disclosure faces. It means who's ever flying these ETs, whatever these UFOs are running on, they're not filling up their gas tank with oil-based product. This is the free energy matter that the movie Thrive got into after it took off from this is the revolution, the free energy revolution that it rides on the coattails of the ET disclosure. This is what the shakeup is about, and this is what is going to reform economic.
That's already here because
we run our society.
It has to be here. That's the only way to break the power of the Middle East is to get rid of the oil. So I'm sure it's already.
But it's not happening. But it's
happening.
May be here.
Are you kidding?
How is it happening? No, I am kidding. Tell me.
How many hybrid cars do you see now compared to 10 years ago? How many? There's. I would say 10% of the roofs here in New Jersey have solar panels on them.
Are they running off the grid on solar power?
Yeah.
I think they
Google is going.
PSE&G has solar power things all the way up and down.
Is going
off the coast of New Jersey.
It's going to be 100% renewable.
I don't think it's here enough because the oil companies still manipulate politics.
Well,
and politicians.
But petrochemicals are used in plastic and other things as well. But
we need to replace all that. But oil is still big business. That was the whole Dakota pipeline thing.
Yes.
They want more oil. They want to lower the price of gasoline so you don't have to buy an expensive Tesla car.
It's still there, but it's obsolescent already. It's on its way out.
It's not yet. It's really not. I think we need 0 point.
Of course you do, but how could you expect something that basic to major economies worldwide to go overnight? I mean, obviously it has to go out in
when we
steps.
find out there are ETs flying their ships on 0 point energy field dynamics,
trust me,
it does go overnight.
No, it'll still be there. You can't just suddenly go off the gold standard. It just doesn't happen economically. It'll happen, but it can't happen rapidly.
Tesla's doing a good job of doing it.
This is what Hal put off. This is what the Department of Defense is working on.
The Department of Defense poo-pooed Tesla back in 1910
They
or whatever
poo-pooed it publicly, but they don't do that privately. We can't. You can't take what they say as a public statement.
So you mean that there is some free energy?
Of course.
Privately they have free energy.
Who was partners with Russell Tarr.
So
he's working for the Department of Defense developing free energy systems. And they go into meetings and they say, how is it going to...
That's why I said they've already cut the legs out from under the oil industry.
They haven't, though.
They just haven't.
They haven't. They're still very much in
It just
control.
hasn't fallen over yet.
I guess it's going to take... I mean, I think this...
Anyway, I'm sorry. I really have no basis to argue with you, Alan.
No.
I'll be quiet now.
No, it's not a matter of being quiet.
I think it's there yet. I'd like it to be there.
I think that it's
on its way.
We're all on the same page here. It's just a matter of is it already happening? Has it happened? Is it about to happen? But we all know it's going to happen if it hasn't happened yet.
Right, but it hasn't happened yet. Otherwise, we'd see a drastic
But listen,
change.
think of it this way too. I mean, the internal combustion engine really took place, 1910, so 115 years ago. There were no cars, there were no planes, there were no jet engines. It's all been the last 100 years. So within 100 years, we have evolved from the Wright brothers winding up a toy airplane to going on the moon. So in the next 100 years, I think you're going to see the same acceleration of change.
If we manage to live through it.
You'll live through it. The only thing that'll come in the way will be a plague. Other than that, you'll live through it. But
too bad there's been 40 years since we've landed on the moon, which is a kind of
that's another
shock,
whole
isn't
thing.
It?
That's boy. We could go into that for another hour
I know.
or two, but
I don't buy a lot of any conspiracy stuff around that. Although I do buy some of it. But yeah, I think it will take time. People didn't want to get rid of their horse and buggy when the car came along.
Exactly.
But I think it's still being suppressed.
Well, I signed up for a Tesla if it makes you feel better.
Well,
go, Kate, go.
They're so expensive; it's hardly worth it. You know, why can't they bring
so's
the price
gas.
up?
Well, listen, I'm supporting
well,
the
exactly. We need free.
I think this.
Have free energy, the whole society will change. The whole dynamics of the Middle East will change. Everything will change.
So that's really what you're trying to bring about, a change for the better through your understanding of spirituality.
And ETs are a major, major part of understanding the paradigm of the future.
Okay.
We're part of something bigger, and we are not limited by fossil fuels, for one.
Do you
That's
think,
a good message.
Do you think we're part of the ETs? Do you think they happened to discover us as another sentient life form, or do you think we were connected way back when?
Well, my personal theory is I think we were already genetically manipulated. You can call it Anunnaki, you can call it whatever, but we, the were given
we're losing you.
Instant upgrade. Hello?
I think we lost you
me?
a little bit. I think that you have to repeat the last sentence because you went in and out.
The question was, I think the ETs have known about us. They let us go about and devise our own little thing. But I think the Anunnaki upgraded the evolving primates about 200,000 years ago, and civilization began, and we got, we started to be creative, inventive beings that separated us from the rest of the animals were here. We still have 99% Earth genes, but it's that 1% of ET chromosomes that have made us different than all the other life forms here. And we've been monitored in place we're at now where, will the full capacity of our brain be activated so we can start to interface telepathically with the evolving cosmos that's all around us. We're not separate from the universe. We're not.
Absolutely not. You're right.
We're not the lonely bastards of a lifeless universe, I used to say. But we're not. Life is not an accident. There's life on every single planet. Not every single, but the ones that can support life, which are trillions throughout the galaxies, throughout the universe, throughout the multiverse. There are life forms everywhere, lots of life forms. So we're part of something way, way bigger, and we need to come together in harmony. And we're at this crossroads. Are we going to reach the place where we can make contact with these ETs, or are we going to self-destruct under our own greed and violence and limited thinking? This is the crossroads we're at. And I agree. I think we're going to make it. It's my feeling.
I thank you so much. I agree with your ideas on that, and I thank you so much for being with us on Shattered Reality, Alan. And I'm sorry if we gave you a little bit of a hard time in there, but I think that this discussion and sort of bouncing things back and forth is very important to greater understanding. We are a conversational podcast, so please, I hope that you understand that we were...
No, of course. It's always fun. It's fun to discuss, to disagree, to agree. This is how communication works. And this is why we're here to all three of us, to evolve civilization, because we can agree and disagree and have ideas. This is what it's about.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. But thank you so much for sharing your ideas with us. They're really good food for thought.
Yes. And I'd have to say that I really enjoyed speaking with you and agree largely with what you're saying. And goodbye from Shattered Reality. We hope to have you on again, Alan, okay?
Thank you so much. It's really been a lot of fun. People can look at my website, newrealities.com, my YouTube, New Realities, youtube.com/newrealities, and my upcoming book called Creating New Realities.
Thank you, and thank you for giving us that website so our listeners can go to your website. We hope that they do, newrealities.com, and from there they can reach all the other places that you're involved, including your YouTube channel, correct?
Yes, cool. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Alan.
Very
it's
lively discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Kate. Nice to meet you, Kate. Good
Same
to hear
here.
from you.
Okay, see you soon, Alan.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Thanks. Bye.
So that was nice. That was interesting.
It was. It's surprising how all these people eventually come to the same point from different perspectives.
That's why that is specifically why I took issue with the word, because I wanted to get rid of a word that it would seem and like trying to put it on something we could all agree with, which was a transcendent experience from wherever it originates, and we sure as heck don't have the facts on that.
No. Be nice, but no, we don't.
I want to announce a couple of things.
Okay.
And the first thing I wanted to announce is that our friends at the Pine Bush UFO Festival in Pine Bush, New York.
This is a biggie, so listen up.
Yes, they have announced the dates, which is May 20th and May 21st. And here's a little secret part. We might very well be involved on those days. We've kind of gotten an invitation there. Yay. We have to iron out the details, but it looks like a big go on that. Thanks to Miss Domani Ragni and our friend Big Al Santariga of the Bronxville Paranormal Society. So we want to thank them. And tell you to hold the date. If you're in the Northeast, hold the date.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is a great. It's a great event. There's food. There's all kinds of fun stuff for families, and then there are, for the more serious individuals, there are the very, very serious discussions in the afternoon and lectures at night, and we're going to be a part of all that, I think. So we'll have to let you know more about that. And the other thing, on a personal, not exactly personal note, but somewhat personal note, I wrote a blog spot that's getting a lot of coverage, which is extraterrestrial evolution. And a lot of other people have picked up on it, and they're reprinting it, and so if you have a chance, go to Fahrusha.wordpress.com, and the latest blog spot is extraterrestrial evolution. So I think, do you have any notices, Kate?
No, I don't. Just that the holiday season is upon us.
Yes,
and so happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy whatever.
Tet.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever your particular preference is along those lines, we hope you have a good one.
Yes, merry, merry, happy, happy, jingle, jingle.
Whatever.
and goodbye from...
Shattered reality.
Okay.